Okay, we're going to walk through structure, sign, and play in a way that makes it, I hope, mildly easier for you to understand it when you read it. I'll start by pointing out that he's talking about structuralism and how it fails, or what it depends upon and how that fails. All right, on the first page, 531 on the right-hand side, he says he wants to talk about the structurality of structure, by which he means structuralism, not just structures themselves, but once it's turned into its own discipline. Structuralism has always been neutralized or reduced, rather structures have, and this by a process of giving it a center or referring it to a point of presence, a fixed origin. By that he means the transcendental signified, the thing that would be true, that would be present, that would point to the world in some way that didn't depend on another sign to explain it. He wants to point out that the organizing principle of the structure would limit what we might call the free play of the structure. And by play, he means both playing, because playing is fun, and play in the sense of like saying something has some give, like there's some play in the door or the joint, something like that. He also talks about a lot of things, one of which on the left-hand side of 532 is that the center is not the center. By this, he means that a transcendental signified would have to have, is different from other signifieds, that the sign with a transcendental signified is different from other signs. So we might think of it as the center of language, or what's operating as the center. But the other thing that's happening is that it's proving how different it is from other signs that it would like to keep in place, keep sort of attached to the world. One way to think about it, and there are several analogies that I'm sure will come up in class, but maybe the easiest one right now is to think of a teepee. A teepee has a pole at the center, at least the ones I know about do, that keeps it upright. And then where you actually live inside is sort of around the center of the pole. And that center sort of belongs to the teepee, but it's also really different from the rest of the, say, leather, fabric, whatever else one uses to build a home. And so it's different from the rest of the structure, which is to say, it is displaced. It's different from, it's always never actually at the center, which is another way of saying that we don't have a transcendental signified. Okay. He goes on to talk about, on 533, exactly how this works. On the left-hand side, at the bottom of that top paragraph, this moment was that in which language invaded the universal problematic, that in which, in the absence of a center or origin, or transcendental signified, everything became discourse, or let's say language, provided we can agree on this word. That is to say, when everything became a system where the central signified, the original or transcendental signified, is never absolutely present outside a system of differences, that the transcendental signified doesn't defer meaning, that doesn't have to be different from, it just actually means a thing. The absence of the transcendental signified extends the domain and the interplay of signification ad infinitum. that there's no limit to language if we give up the transcendental signified. Okay, I'm going to skip ahead, although you should feel very smart because he talks about Levi-Strauss, whom we just read, and the way in which Levi-Strauss breaks down this certain binary between nature and culture. And I'm going to skip to the page, the top right-hand side of page 539. Well, the very 3 words on the bottom left-hand side of 539, but non-totalization, meaning the structure isn't total, doesn't have a transcendental signified, can also be determined in another way, not from the standpoint of the concept of finitude as assigning us to an empirical view, but from the standpoint of the concept of free play. If totalization no longer has any meaning, it is not because the infinity of a field cannot be covered by a finite glance or a finite discourse. It's not because we can't, it's not, the problem isn't with the concept of infinity, but because the nature of the field, that is language, and a finite language, excludes totalization. This field is in fact that of free play. That is to say, a field of infinite substitutions, that all signs defer, have to be substituted or rely on other signs in order to become meaningful. We have to know what animal is to understand what cat is. Okay. At the end of the essay, on page 542, he says that there are 2 ways to respond to this absence of a transcendental signified. He says the first way is that there are thus 2 interpretations of interpretation of structure, of sign, of free play. The one seeks to decipher, dreams of deciphering a truth or an origin. This is structuralism. A truth or an origin which is free from free play and from the order of the sign. The other, which is no longer turned toward the origin, no longer looking for transcendental signified, post-structuralism, deconstruction, affirms free play and tries to pass beyond man and humanism and our logocentrism, our desire for a transcendental signified. Okay, we dream of full presence, but it's not there. We can respond with deconstruction, which affirms, which finds this affirming. In other words, on the right-hand side, he says that the possibility of choosing the negative, of choosing to take this badly, like to say there is no God and thus we are at a loss, isn't effective, that we have to choose to take it positively, or that we're better off if we choose to take it positively, and positive meaning like in a fun way, where now we get to play with language or play with meaning and undo whatever discourses or languages we think gave meaning to the world before. We get to rely on or have fun with the undecidability and the lack of a transcendental signified. Okay, good luck.